Hello, beloved of Yahuah. Man has been allotted 6,000 years in his fallen state. The creation pattern of 7 days gives us a hint of how long we are allotted. And since Peter told us that one day is the same as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is the same as one day, then common sense tells us that men have been allotted 6,000 years in our fallen state. And then comes the 1,000-year rest for creation, 1,000-year Millennium Reign for Yahusha and His Bride. Most people are unaware that Peter's quote, that is, one day is 1,000 years and 1,000 years is one day, was actually borrowed from Jubilees. So Peter was actually quoting the book of Jubilees when he said that. Also, in the book of Jubilees, it says that Adam, who was created in year zero, we'll say, creation year zero, fell, him and Yahuah fell or transgressed the Torah of Yahuah in the 7th year after they were created. And specifically in the book of Jubilees, it says that this fall occurred on the 7th year, the 2nd month, and the 17th day. So, although most people begin man's allotted 6,000 years from year zero, it may be that our 6,000 years allotted begins at the time of the fall, when Adam and Yahuah fell or transgressed, which would have been 7 years 7. It only took them 7 years. They were only on the earth 7 years before they fell. Okay, so our 6,000 years could start at that point where they actually transgressed the Torah. Okay, either way, it's only 7 years. So, just roughly, then, just to give you a little bit of an idea, the flood, Noah's flood, the Great Flood, happened approximately 1,656 years after creation. So, and then the birth of Abraham came about 300 years after the flood, which would have been around year 1948 from creation. The Exodus of the children of Israel from Egypt happened approximately 2,448 years after creation. The dedication of Solomon's temple was approximately 2,935 years after creation. The destruction of Solomon's temple was roughly 3,338 years after creation. In the state of Israel, speaking about right now, according to the Jews, is around 5,872 years since creation. Okay, but we don't really know if these are all accurate. I mean, it's nobody knows the day and the hour or the year, or we don't even know if the time's accurate. Really, I mean, our calendar, which we go by the Gregorian calendar. Some people call it the Roman calendar. There's the Hebrew calendar. There's different calendars. The Julian calendar. I've done some in-depth research on recording time and all these calendars and stuff, and it's just a big mess. I mean, it's not even worth fooling with. The Hebrew calendar itself, you have to be a mathematician to even begin to understand how they're tracking the days and the years. It's just crazy. But the truth is, folks, that the Roman calendar, none of these calendars that we have today are going to help us to know the exact year that we are actually in compared, at year zero. All right. So from the year zero, starting at year zero of creation, or starting at the fall of man, when Adam and Yahuah disobeyed the Torah in year 7, either way on, we have 6,000 years. Okay, and that's it. Then comes the 1,000-year rest of the earth. So even if it's from the fall, I mean, we're only off about 7 years. The Gregorian calendar, the Roman calendar that we are presently using, is off even at its beginning, where it starts. It's supposed to be at Yahusha's birth, the year that the Messiah came. But actually, it's if you check it, it actually, even that is 5 years off. So he was really born instead of 0, okay, right there, 0 AD or CE, whatever they call it. It's really 5 AD or CE, is when he was really born. So it's 5 years off. Even that's 5 years off. So, I mean, it's not a whole lot, but the point of it is nobody knows what they're doing. It's a mess. I mean, good luck if you want to try to figure it out, but I couldn't. It was just too complicated. Not to mention the fact that, the Hebrews claim to be accurate in their count of the years since creation. But in truth, the truth is they were scattered. They've been scattered, and they have been occupied, oppressed, removed from their land, gone through slavery. I mean, all kinds of stuff, and they have no idea. They don't even know the exact pinpoint spot where the second temple actually stood, and so obviously the Hebrews and us, the people, everybody in the planet has lost track, not only of the commands of Yahuah or the Torah, but have lost track of time since creation as well. So nobody's accurate on that. But anyways, the lesson I'd like to have speak about today, or the study I'd like to have with you today, is about the end of the days, okay, that we're in, or the latter days, or the latter times. And so when we start thinking about, even if the Hebrew are wrong and they're off by a couple hundred years, no matter what, or if some of the other people are correct and we are already in the tribulation years, or the latter days, we're close. Either way, if it's within 200 years or less, we're close. Okay, compared to when creation began at year 0, we're close to the end of the 6,000 years. Either way. So at the end, Scripture plainly tells us, and Yahusha told us, that there would be a great tribulation, the likes that have never been seen since man was created. And so there's going to be a great tribulation, and then it's going to end with come into the day of Yahuah, and then you're going to have the Millennium Reign, the 1,000-year rest period, where Yahusha, his bride, perhaps some martyrs that were killed or beheaded during the Great Tribulation years, and a few other people that are left that survived the day of Yahuah, who will be going into the Millennium Reign. Okay. Then after the 1,000-year rest or Sabbath or the Millennium Reign of Yahusha comes the White Throne Judgement. And then after the White Throne Judgment comes the new heaven and earth. And then once that happens, the new Jerusalem, or the new city coming down from the heavens from Yahuah onto the new earth. And then after that, then eternity. Okay, and so that's what it's all leading up to. So, and that said, let's concentrate mostly on the day of Yahuah and the Millennium Reign. Okay, we'll touch on all the other stuff, but that's the two things I'd really like to concentrate on. So, in order to get started, let's start off by confirming in Scripture that there is an actual day of Yahuah, the great and awesome day of Yahuah. Okay, and let's confirm that, and then we'll go on in perhaps more into the Millennium Reign. So first place to start would be Isaiah 24. And Isaiah 24 says in verse 4, "The earth shall mourn and wither, the world shall languish and wither, the haughty people of the Eretz shall languish, for the Eretz has been defiled under its inhabitants, because they have transgressed the Torah, changed the law, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore a curse shall consume the earth, and those who dwell on it or in it will be punished. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth shall be burned up, and few men shall be left." All right, so few men will be left. So the earth is going to be burned up because of what the inhabitants have done. Okay. And they have transgressed the Torah, changed the laws, and broken the everlasting covenant. Okay? And so this is why it's going to burn. So Isaiah 24 confirms that the earth will burn. And the very interesting aspect of that passage is that few men will be left. So that means there will be survivors. Not everyone's going to perish at that point. So prior to the day of Yahuah, we have tribulation years. So the tribulation years, we all pretty much, I think, are familiar with the tribulation years. I think most of us are. The prophecy about the tribulation years is the main prophecy is given to us in the book of Revelations and somewhat in Daniel. But it tells us about, it speaks of all kinds of terrible plagues and tribulations that will fall over the earth during the end times, or the short years leading up to the day of Yahuah. It's going to be a 7-year start with 3.5 years of birth pains, and then in the middle, okay, will be the confirmation of the covenant, basically where they're going to divide the land and make a peace treaty, and they will acknowledge the right of Israel to live there and have some of the land allocated to them. And then at that point, in the last 3.5 years leading up to the day of Yahuah will be the tribulation years. So the tribulation years themselves last 3.5 years, or the final 3.5 years of our 6,000 years. It was allocated to the men in their fallen state. All right, so that's it. And then comes the 7,000 years is going to begin after that. So the tribulation years ends our 6,000 year allotted time period. There's going to be wars. It's going to be really, really bad. The last 3.5 years that we have is going to be really bad. There's going to be 2 wars. The one war will kill 1/3 of mankind. It's a lot of people. That's more people than all the other wars that was ever fought in them 6,000 years combined. Way more people. Okay, so it's going to be massive. The carnage, the destruction, the smell, the death, the mass graves. It's going to be unspeakable. Can't even really imagine it. The figure of the human carnage. You can't even really imagine it in your mind. It's so massive of amount. And so then the second war will come right at the end. There will be, and more than likely, and I'm going to say 99.99% likely, that both of these wars will be nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare. Okay, they're going to be bad. And not to mention all the crazy tribal stuff going on all over the place at the same time. These big, huge world wars are taking place. You can just imagine no water. The waters are going to all be bitter and poison. No food. Maybe cannibalism going on. It's just going to be a bad, bad scenario all the way around. Okay. And so the last of it, the last war, is going to be more focused on the Middle East and Israel. That's when all the armies led by the anti-Messiah or the false prophet are going to encircle and invade Israel from the north. Okay, and they're going to encircle Jerusalem, basically, and Israel will probably retaliate and choose the Samson option, which is nuclear, total annihilation, suicide, basically kill them and kill all their enemies rather than suffer defeat and the loss of the state of Israel forever, wiped off the face of the earth forever. So they choose the Samson option, suicide by nuclear bomb, take the enemies out with them, basically. So that's the climax. So the climax of our 6,000 year reign is going to be nuclear Samson option. Israel is gonna use their it's gonna be the last desperation. Their last desperate attempt to wipe out all their enemies, but they're gonna take out themselves with them. So it's almost a suicidal uh, type plan, so it's not a very good one anyway. But at the climax of the 6,000 years, which is better known as Armageddon, most people know it as Armageddon, is when the 7,000 years begins. Okay, so the day of Yahuah. So Yahuah himself will come down and rescue Israel from the point of self-destruction, or so he's not going to allow that. Okay, and so it says the days will be shortened for the sake of the elect, and the elect will be his bride that remains alive at the time, that's going through these tribulation years, and he's going to stop them from totally annihilating themselves at the brink of annihilation for the sake. He's going to cut the days short for the sake of the elect or his bride that are alive at that time, living on the planet, going through the tribulation years. Okay, so I think when most of us are familiar with the tribulation years, at that time, then the day of Yahuah comes, and the day of Yahuah is going to be in there within that short time frame after the climax of the tribulation years. So what I'm getting at is the millennium, the trumpets, the first resurrection. Okay, so you got the tribulation years ending. You have the first resurrection, the day of trumpets. Okay, when the dead and the Messiah, or the ones that are asleep, that fell asleep with the indwelling spirit of the Yahusha in them, will be resurrected. Okay, and then you have Yom Kippur, which is the last chance for anybody else that are still alive to be able to call on the name of Yahuah and be delivered. So it's getting down to the nitty gritty. Okay, the end of man's 6,000 year existence. So, in the last chance, those who call upon the name of Yahuah will be delivered. And this is your fasting. This is fasting and prayer. Symbolically, is a very serious time, folks, because at the end of that day, that's the closing day, the last hour, the last minute of that 6,000 years. All right, that's what Yom Kippur is. So until then, you can call on the name of Yahuah and be delivered. But as soon as nightfall comes on Yom Kippur, after that tribulation period, okay, and the blowing of the trumpets and the first resurrection, the very end of Yom Kippur, when nighttime comes and 3 medium-sized stars are seen in the sky, they will blow the trumpet, which signals the end of the fast, okay, or the closing of the door or the gate, okay, and that'll be the end of the age. That's the end of the 6,000 year period. That's it. It's the fullness of the Gentiles will have come in. Okay, that's what that means. That's it. So as soon as that last trump on the closing of Yom Kippur on that day, it signifies the end of the 6,000 allotted years to man after the fall. All right, or the 6-day week, the 6 days of the week, each day representing 1,000 years. Okay, so that's what that is. So then, at the closing of the door, or the closing of Yom Kippur, the end of the 6,000 year period, then those who remain alive that have been delivered or have the indwelling spirit of Yahusha in them will be changed to immortality in the wink of an eyelid. Boom, like that. You got your immortality. All right, and so how you have them, and you have the first resurrection group who was resurrected into immortality because they had the indwelling spirit of Yahusha. They're the bride. So both groups, the first resurrection at the sound of the trump in the beginning of the days of all, through the 10 days of all, they'd be walking around on the earth. Many people are going to be delivered because of that great sign. I mean, think about it. And then at the very last day, after the closing of the door or the blowing of the shofar, the end of the 6,000 year period, then the ones that remain will be changed in the wink of an eyelid that have the indwelling spirit of Yahushua. And that group together is going to be the first resurrection group, or the elect, or the bride. Okay? And then, while the bride or the elect have their immortality, okay, the reapers are going to be running around removing the weeds and the tars that remain. They're going to be bundling it up. So they're going to just pass over you because you're going to be immortal. You're going to be sealed with the name of Yahuah, if you're one of the elect. But they're going to be getting everybody else, okay? Getting them ready for the fire, basically. At the day, then I'm not. Nobody knows everything, okay? So bear with me here. I may be off whack here somewhat, and I admit it. Okay, I don't know it all. Nobody does. Ain't one person can come to you and explain all this perfectly to you in timeline. It just ain't gonna happen. So, but we're gonna have some fun with this because I think it's very exciting and important, to talk about it. Really, I mean, I think it's a very heavy conversation to have. So just bear with me and let's see what we come up with here. But I think then at that point, the bride of Yahusha, she's going to be coming back the day of Yahuah, okay? But there's a 5-day period here, all right, and which is gray area, and the bride is either going to be caught up with Yahusha in the clouds as he's ascending, coming down to the earth on his second coming. As the earth is burning, and we're going to see it burning, and then one time we come down onto the earth with Yahusha on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem, then the earth ain't going to be, it's not going to be a big ball of fire anymore, but it's going to be, because there's going to be a big earthquake when he comes down. The Mount of Olives is going to be split in half. You know what I mean? So it's going to be a tremendous display of power and might. Or we're going to, since we will be immortal, then the day of Yahuah will come as be prior to him coming down and us getting caught up, or right, or maybe simultaneously, I don't know. But anyway, It could be that the earth will start burning, and we're going to be on the earth in our mortal bodies prior to him coming and catching us up, and we're going to see the wrongdoers burning. They're going to be burning in front of our eyes. We're going to see them, look at them right in their face, and their face is going to be on fire and burning. And they're going to look at each other, and they're going to see each other's face burning and their eyes melting out of their eye sockets and everything. And they're going to be screaming and carrying. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be unbelievable, you know. So, and then after that happens, and most all the wrongdoers are burned up, it says few men, some men will be left. It's not everybody's going to die and be burned up. It says people will be left. We just read that, you know. So then, then maybe then after all that happens, and most people are burned up, it's supposed to be burned up, and then we'll be caught up with him and come on down to the Mount of Olives with him, where it's going to split the Mount of Olives. When he puts his foot down there, it's going to be a huge earthquake, the largest earthquake that's ever happened, you know, and the earth's going to split. And don't forget, during the supernova, I guess, is what it's going to be about. And the sun goes black and the moon turns into red. The sun's going to distinguish itself. It's going to go out, you know. And then when it reignites, boom, you know, all that energy and fire and heat is what's going to come down and scorch the earth. And that's why the earth's going to burn. I mean, it's a possibility. But don't forget, man, the meteors, there's supposed to be meteors, or the stars are going to fall too. So there's going to be huge meteors. Meteors going to be coming down and striking the earth too. Just pow, 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 everywhere. I mean, that's crazy. Think about it. So unless we have immortal bodies, I don't see how we survive that. And we definitely going to get caught up, because it says we're going to be changed in the wink of an eyelid and caught up with Yahusha as he's ascending down. So we definitely going to have our immortal bodies before we get caught up with him into the clouds as he's ascending back down to the Mount of Olives. You know, and if we're here when the earth is burning, that meteors are going striking the earth, and the stars are falling out of the sky, and all that's going on, we got to have immortal bodies, so we're going to get burned up too. See what I'm saying? So we have to have our immortal bodies to go to just to survive all that, and it says we won't be harmed at all. Not one hair on your head will be burnt. You know. And it says that we will be like calves being let loose from a stall, and be jumping in joy, pouncing around and joyful, and the wrong will be ashes under our feet. So no matter what, you know, we're not going to be hurt at all. So either Yahuah is going to protect us in our fleshly bodies, and we won't get hurt, or we're going to have immortality, and that's why we won't get hurt. And I think it's the latter myself. So anyways, after the day of Yahuah, then the Millennium Reign comes, the White Throne Judgement afterwards, and then the new heaven and earth, the new Jerusalem, and eternity. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's go back into the day of Yahuah and read more about the day of Yahuah, just to make sure that this is really going to happen. So if we go to Joel and try to find out how it's going to happen, you know, I'm pretty sure we already know it's going to happen, but Joel 2, verse 28 says, "And after this it shall be that I pour out my Ruach on all flesh. And your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your old men dream dreams, your young men see visions. And also on the male servants and on the female servants I shall pour out my Ruach in those days. And I shall give signs in the Shemayim and upon the earth, blood and fire and columns of smoke. The sun is turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the coming of the great and awesome day of Yahuah. And it shall be that everyone who calls on the name of Yahuah shall be delivered. For on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there shall be an escape as Yahuah has said, and among the survivors who Yahuah calls. So there you go. So, very interesting, you know. I mean, it sounds like the bride is being established before the day of Yahuah. Okay. And that's what I believe it means by his Ruach will be poured out on sons and daughters shall prophesy, and he pour out his Ruach in those days. And so that he's pouring out his Ruach into his bride or his elect, in the dwelling spirit of Yahusha, and before the day of Yahuah comes. I think that's what this is saying. And it says on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there shall be an escape, as Yahuah has said, and among the survivors who Yahuah calls. So I think this is somehow is when they're caught up and you come back down on Jerusalem, you know, that's your escape from what everything is going to happen. But anyway, let's move on. Go to Zephaniah. Maybe that's Zephaniah. I'm not real good at this with these words, but anyway, Zephaniah. I think that's what that is. Anyway, 1:14. Near is the great day of Yahuah, near and hurrying greatly, the noise of the day of Yahuah. Let the mighty man then bitterly cry out. The day is a day of wrath, a day of distress and trouble, a day of waste and ruin, a day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and thick darkness, a day of ram's horn and alarm against the walled cities and against the corner towers. And I shall bring distress on men, and they shall walk like blind men, because they have sinned against Yahuah. And their blood shall be poured out like dust, and their flesh like dung. Neither their silver nor their gold shall be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of Yahuah. And by the fire of his jealousy all the rich shall be consumed, for he makes a sudden end of all those who dwell in the Eretz. So, you know, that right there tells you this is going to be a day of the Yahuwah's doing this, a day of wrath, a day of darkness. So this is confirming to us that this is happening after the Great Tribulation. This isn't the Great Tribulation we're reading here right now. This is afterwards. So after the man goes through all this stuff on his own, almost to the brink of self-annihilation, he cuts the day short so that we do not self-annihilate ourselves, but for the sake of the elect, who I believe will have received immortality before the day of Yahuah, and then he's going to punish us. He's bringing in his wrath and his punishment severely. It's, you know what I'm saying? It's bad news. So anyway, go to Malachi 4. And Malachi 4 says, "For look, the day shall come burning like a furnace, and all the proud and every wrongdoer shall stubble, and the day that shall come shall burn them up, says Yahuah Sabaoth. which leaves to them neither root nor branch. But to you who fear my name, the servant of righteousness shall arise with healing in his wings, and you shall go out and leap for joy like calves from the stall. See that? So I think when it is saying that fear my name, the servant of righteousness shall rise up with healing, I think you're going to get immortality right there. And then you leap out for joy like calves from the stall. And you shall trample the wrongdoers, the ones that were just burned up. And they shall be ashes under the soles of your feet. See, they're ashes. On the day that I do this, said Yahuah Sabaoth. So we've been protected by Yahusha and haven't been hurt at all while we watch them burn. And then when it's all over, we'll be leaping for joy, not because they were burnt, but because evil and sin has been destroyed, and we're still alive. We've been delivered and saved from that, So yeah, I think you will probably be very joyful. But the ashes under our feet are going to be the ones that were burned up. So it says, remember the Torah of Moses, my servant. So remember the Torah, the 5 first books of Moses. My servant, which I commanded him in Coreb for all Yesharel, laws and right rulings. So this is speaking specifically of the 10 Commandments or the covenant of love. See, I am sending you Aliyah, or Elijah, the prophet, before the coming of the great and awesome day of Yahuah, and he shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the Eretz with utter destruction. So that's very interesting, maybe speaking of one of the 2 witnesses there will be Elijah. I don't know. Eliyahu, maybe Yahuchanan, and Eliyahu will be the 2 witnesses. Who knows? But that's during the tribulation years anyway. Okay, the day of Yahuah is afterwards. But he's saying to prepare yourself, okay, prior to the day of Yahuah, is to remember the Torah of Moses, the Torah. So repent and start obeying the 10 Commandments again, his commands. In order to do that, you have to enter the renewed covenant, because if you don't enter the renewed covenant, it's impossible for you to be able to obey the covenant of love or the 10 Commandments. So that's what that's speaking about. So let's go to Acts. Acts 2, 37 says, Men, brothers, what shall we do? And Kepha said to them, Repent, let each one of you be immersed in the name of Yahushua Mashiach for the forgiveness of sins, and you shall receive the gift of the Ruach HaKodesh. So basically, this is telling us that, that this is what you have to do when you say remember the Torah of Moshe, okay? And then you do this so that it helps you remember the Torah of Moshe. So you have to do this first before you can remember the Torah of Moshe and start obeying his commands. All right? So you have to call on the name of Yahusha, repent in the name of Master Yahusha, be water immersed in the name of Master Yahusha, be immersed with the Ruach HaKodesh in the name of Master Yahusha, okay, before you can remember the Torah of Moses or be obedient to the 10 Commandments. Let's go over here to Acts 2:15. Says, "For these men are not drunk." This is after they've received the Ruach HaKodesh the first time. As you imagine, since it is only the third hour of the day, but this is what was spoken by the prophet Joel. And it shall be in the last day, says Elohim, that I shall pour out my Ruach on all flesh, and your sons and daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. And also on my male servant and on my female servants I shall pour out my Ruach in those days, and they shall prophesy. And I shall show wonders in the heaven above, and signs in the earth beneath, blood and fire and vapor of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the coming of the great and splendid day of Yahuah. And it shall be that everyone who calls on the name of Yahuah shall be delivered. So there you go. There's Peter, just got the Ruach given to him with the other 120 in the upper chamber. And what's he do? He starts remembering the Torah of Moshe. Immediately he starts teaching out of the Torah and quotes Joel, what we just read. The same thing. He confirms he's confirming the day of Yahuwah's coming. So you better remember the day, remember the Torah of Moses, and you better get immersed, water immersed and spiritually immersed, after your repentance. So Peter's confirming all that. Speaking of Peter, let's go to 2 Peter 3. 2 Peter 3, verse 3. Knowing this first, that mockers shall come in the last days with mocking. That's tribulation days. Walking according to their own lusts. It could be the days leading to the 3.5 years, but it's right in there. And saying, where is the promise of his coming? So they're teasing you. Where's he at? Where is he at? He's not here. We can do whatever we want. That's kind of childish stuff, I guess. Where's the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all continues as from the beginning of creation. So they're saying, he ain't coming. I don't believe that. That's probably thousands and tens of thousands of years away yet. You guys are all nuts. For they choose to have this hidden from them. The mockers, they choose to have this hidden from them, that the skies were of old, and the earth standing out of water and in the water, by the word of Elohim, through which the world at that time was destroyed, right around that 1658 year from creation, being flooded with water, and the present skies and the earth are treasured up by the same word. The same earth, same skies. Okay. Being kept for fire to a day of judgment and destruction of wicked men. Okay, so it says it's not going to be destroyed by water like it did the first time. It's going to come from fire this time. And prior to the day of judgment and the destruction of all wicked men, sin and evil and Satan. But, beloved ones, let not this one thing be hidden from you. Now he's talking about the elect, the beloved ones, the Netzarim. Don't let this one thing be hidden from you, that with Yahuah 1 day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as 1 day. Here he's quoting just what we just read prior to this. He was quoting Joel too. Here he's actually quoting the book of Jubilees when he's saying that. Yahuah is not slow in regard to the promise, as some count slowness, but is patient toward us, not wishing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. Repentance is huge. But the day of Yahuah shall come as a thief in the night, in which the Shemayim shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with intense heat. So here Peter is even giving us a more distinct picture in our mind here. Not only the earth is going to be burning, the elements themselves are going to melt from the intense heat of it. Wow. Think about that. The elements will melt? Wow, man. And the earth and the works that are in it shall be burned up. So everything's going to be burned up. Seeing all these are to be destroyed in this way, by fire, which kind of people ought you to be in set apart behavior and reverence, looking for and hastening the coming of the day of Elohim, through which the Shemayim shall be destroyed, so the heavens are going to be destroyed, being set on fire, and the elements melt with intense heat. So even the heavens are going to be set on fire. He's what Peter's saying, and the elements will melt with intense heat. It's unbelievable if you really think a little bit harder about that. Wow. But according to his promise, we wait for a renewed heaven and a renewed earth in which uprightness dwells. So that's going to come way later, after the White Throne Judgement, and all sin has been judged, devil's been destroyed, all that, before we reach that point. Okay? That's going to be after the 1,000-year Millennium Reign, obviously. So then, beloved ones, looking forward to this, do your utmost to be found by him in peace, spotless and blameless. If you're not spotless and blameless, you can't be the bride. You got to eliminate all lies, deceit, falsehood, idolatry, all that out of your life. That's what the bride does. She does it on her own, okay? Eliminates all this stuff out of her life on her own voluntary level. She does it herself, with the indwelling spirit of Yahusha, of course, helping her. But I'm saying she does it because she loves Yahuah and she loves his commands and she wants to be obedient. Okay, she's willing to come back home and return back to her husband and be a good bride again. She's doing it on her own. That's why she becomes the bride. And reckon the patience of our master as deliverance. Okay, so his patience is deliverance of the lost sheep. So he's being patient until the fishermen, the hunters, and the harvest workers find all the sheep prior to the closing of Yom Kippur, or the fullness of the Gentiles coming in, or the very end, the last second of the 6,000 years allotted to us, when that gate is closed and no one else can enter then. See what I'm saying? So Peter, he really paints it, gives us a lot more detail about it. It's really scary stuff, really. So then Matthew 25 says, or in 24, verse 28, it says, "For wherever the dead body is, there the eagles shall be gathered together. And immediately after the distress of those days, immediately after the tribulation days, the dead body is there, the eagles shall be." The eagles are the messengers, okay? And immediately after the distress, those days after tribulation, immediately the sun shall be darkened and the moon shall not give its light. and the stars shall fall from the heaven, and the powers of the Shemayim shall be shaken. So, I mean, here's even greater detail from Yahusha himself. And then the sign of the son of Adam shall appear in the heaven. So here we go. So after the stars fall and the powers of the Shemayim are shaken, the sun is darkened and the moon doesn't give its light, turns into like red blood. When all that happens, that's the day of Yahuah, and then the sign of the son of Adam shall appear in the heaven. So here comes Yahusha back. And then all the tribes of the earth shall mourn, and they shall see the son of Adam coming on the clouds of the heaven with power and much esteem. And he shall send his messengers with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his chosen ones from the four winds, from one end of the Shemayim to the other. So I believe this is right after. So basically then, we're going to be on the earth during the day of Yahuah in our immortal bodies, and we're not going to be hurt. Because it says right after that is when Yahusha's coming back, and he sends his messengers to collect up his elect, his chosen ones, from the four winds and from one end of the Shemayim to the other. So he's coming and getting us and catching us up with him as he's coming down. So that happens after the day of Yahuah. So we're on the earth during all that with the wrongdoers. We're going to be seeing them face to face, watching their faces burn and their eyes come out of their sockets and so forth and so on. But not one hair on our hair will be burnt. See, so we're probably going to almost have to have immortal bodies. But I mean, Yahuah can do anything, so he can definitely protect us even if we're still in the flesh. No doubt about that. I'm not saying he can't. I'm just saying I'm thinking we're not being our immortal bodies because what we just read prior to that. So it's all kind of coming together here a little bit. But let's see now. In Hebrews 12, around 25, or verse 26, it says, whose voice shook the earth then? But now he has promised, saying, yet once more I shake not only the earth, but also the heaven. And this, yet once more, makes clear the removal of what is shaken, as having been made, so that the unshaking things might remain. Therefore, receiving an unshakable reign, let us hold the favor through which we serve Yahuah pleasingly with reverence and awe. For indeed, our Yahuah is a consuming fire. Yahuah is a consuming fire. So, I think that pretty much establishes the fact that there will definitely be a day of Yahuah coming right after, it says immediately after, the tribulation years, or the closing of the 6,000 years allotted to men. Okay? And I think that's what we've established. I'm going to throw a couple pictures up here, and then we're going to come right back and finish off this study. So stick with me. This is a very heavy duty, very deep conversation we're having, and it's a lot of fun. So stay with me. See you in just a couple seconds. Okay, so I think that pretty much established the day of Yahuah is real, and it's going to happen right after the tribulation years, immediately after. So now that brings us into the next thing that's going to happen. Our 6,000 years allotted to men is over. Okay, the day of Yahuah is came. Okay, he's punished man and burned everything up, basically. The day of his wrath. Okay, he's poured out his wrath that he basically patiently waited upon for 6,000 years. And now we're going into the Millennium Reign, what they call the 1,000-year rest of the earth, or the seventh day, okay, or the Millennium Reign of Yahusha. Okay, so the Millennium Reign is basically a time period where everything's going to be able to rest, calm down. It's going to be basically kind of like the way it was always supposed to be, not exactly, but very close to it. All right, and there's still going to be, it's going to be like it is now, where, in other words, people are going to be getting married. There's going to still be people. Remember, not everybody was burned up. Some people were left, or actually survived that. Believe that or not, man. I don't know how they survived it, but they did. And so they're going to. There's going to be some survivors. They survived through tribulation years, and they survived through the day of Yahuah. Okay. There's going to be still going to be sin in the world. The survivors are still going to be saturated. Their flesh will still be saturated in sin. In other words, they'll still be carrying the original sin in their flesh. Okay, they'll still be contaminated with the original sin. But they're going to be breeding. They're going to be, procreating. They're going to be living like we are now, but without the influence of the devil and his demons, and without the influence of men's teachings, traditions, governments, religions, falsehood, idolatry. All that will be gone. We won't have that influence on us like we do now. There won't be any war. All the wars will be gone. The Battle of Armageddon was the last war that will ever be fought on the planet. Although Satan's going to try to have another war, but he's not going to get to do it. So anyway, this is coming to the Millennium Reign now. Basically the reapers went around and removed all the weeds and the tars, bundling up for the great fire. Okay, and so I'm thinking that the people that were destroyed or annihilated during the burning of the day of Yahuah, that were gathered together and bundled, were judged right there and then. I don't think that they will not be rose up to stand trial in front of the judge on the White Throne Judgement, in front of Yahusha. I don't think that's going to happen. Basically because of what it says in Psalms 1. But, Psalms 1 indicates that the wrongdoers will not stand judgment. So we'll go to it real quick. It says, for Yahuah knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked ones will perish. Therefore the wrong shall not rise in the judgment. See, the wrong shall not rise in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. So the wrong shall not rise in judgment. So I think the wrong that was burnt up in the day of Yahuah will not rise to judgment. I think they've been destroyed totally. I think they're gone. So during the Millennium Reign, then we have Yahusha, the bride, the elect, in their immortal bodies. They won't be judged either. Okay, they're not going to be judged at the White Throne Judgement either. They're going to be excluded from that. So the bride, the elect, or the Nazarene will be excluded from the White Throne Judgment because they've already worked. Uh, they've already became the bride. They've already inherited the kingdom and entered the kingdom. While they was on earth prior to all this stuff happening. That's why. And so the second death has no power over them, over the elect. They've already received their immortal bodies, so they're not going to be given mortality. Take away their immortality and give them back mortality just to stand trial. That's not going to happen. Neither do I think that the tars and the weeds that were burned up in the day of Yahuah, I don't think they're going to come back, be resurrected back up and given bodies to be judged again. I think they were judged. That's why they were collected up and thrown in the fire and burnt. And then there's the martyrs, and Revelation speaks about an altar in the temple of Yahuah in the heavens, that the ones that were beheaded in white, wearing white robes, beheaded in the tribulation years for their testimony of Yahuah, for Yahusha. So these martyrs possibly will be on in the Millennium Reign as well. And I don't think they're going to be the bride because they didn't clean themselves up and become spotless without blemish and wrinkle like the bride did. Okay, but they were delivered in through the tribulation years and beheaded. They're the martyrs, if you will. If you believe that the ones that were beheaded at the White Throne, under the altar, the ones under the altar, are in fact martyrs during the tribulation years. In a way, I think it may be metaphoric in speaking of the bride, okay, because there really is a lot of metaphoric when you start talking about heaven and the throne and all this and that. There's a lot of metaphorically in all that. It's not real. A lot of it's not literal. It's a metaphor. It's shadowing something that's coming or something that's real, but it's not itself is not real. It's like an idiom. You're not supposed to ever take an idiom literal. Because if you do, you're going to have the wrong meaning behind the idiom. You're not going to understand it at all. So if I say who let the cat out of the bag, or I let the cat out of the bag, and you think that I literally had a cat inside of a bag and I opened up and let him out, you're missing the real, true point that I'm trying to make. And so that could be, But if it's not, then the martyrs, or the ones under the altar, spoken about in Revelations, will probably be in the Millennium Reign as well. But they won't be the bride, And then those few that are left on the earth after the day of Yahuah, that survived the tribulation years and survived the day of Yahuah somehow, will also be in the Millennium Reign. So at this time, if you really consider that, either after all this destruction, either Yahuah is going to regenerate the earth, renew it, so that we can live on it under Yahusha for 1,000 years, or it's going to basically just come back and regenerate itself. Now, anybody that's ever seen a farmer or a rancher burn a field purposely, if you ever seen them do it, it gets all a bunch of briars and weeds and trees and all kinds of stuff grows up in this field and messes up the field, so they can't grow hay or wheat or anything in there. And so what they do is and if it starts getting gnarly, where it's not really producing really good crop, they'll go in there and they'll do a controlled burning, and they'll dig around that field, dirt around it, and they'll light it up and they'll burn that field with fire. And it'll look all black and scorched, right? And then you come back about a little bit later, a month or two later, and that's the most beautiful field you've ever saw in your life. And how it actually fertilizes it, and cleans it all up. So it probably wouldn't take long for the earth to come back like that, and come back beautiful again. So during the Millennium Reign, it's going to be like the days of Noah, where people are going to live a long time. You're going to live a long time, and it basically when he comes back, when Yahusha comes back with his armies of messengers, it begins. I believe it not only begins the Millennium Reign, but it begins the healing, upon the earth, where the earth regenerates itself, and once this starts, the renewed earth begins. Okay, now this is the beginning of that 1,000-year era period known as the Millennium Reign, and it's an era of peace and no war. It's a time of harmony throughout the earth, and Yahusha and his bride and the few that remain will be multiplying and repopulating the earth. Will be ruled by Yahusha and his bride, and possibly the martyrs. Okay, also will be resurrected and living upon the earth at that time, probably in immortal bodies, if that's actually what happens. So it's a time when all wrong will be made right, and the evils will be all evil. Most all evil. There's still going to be some sin, but most evil will be cleansed from the earth. In Isaiah 65, we can read a fuller description of the wonder, this wonderful world that's going to be in perfect harmony and will be ruled by the government of Yahusha. Okay. In other words, nobody will exploit another, and nobody will steal or murder. The entire earth will be under the rule of Yahusha and the bride, and possibly the martyrs under the altar that have received immortality. You can read about that in Revelations 24, verse 4. And their government, the government at the time, Yahusha's government, will be fair and exactly according to Elohim's Torah, or right rulings. It will be how Elohim always intended the earth to be. It'll be a haven of peace and righteousness and joy. It will wipe the tears from our eyes. So the Millennium Reign will be a renewed creation, so to speak, in complete harmony with Yahuah's will for his creation. And like I said, people will live much longer like they did in the days of Noah, when they were living 800, 700, 800, 900,000, 1,200 years old. So they'll be living much longer than they do now. And so the earth was going to be able to repopulate very quickly because of that. You can read about that in Isaiah 65, actually. Even the animals will stop from killing one another for food, and all of them will turn to eating grass and plants. They will be vegetarians. So I'll read about that in Isaiah 65. But like I said, there will be sin, because the people will still have been, that are still there breeding and repopulating, will still have the original sin saturated in their flesh. So in spite of all this, the sinful nature that is inherited in all of mankind because of the original sin will not have changed. People will still be born with flesh in which dwells the original sin. And it says in Romans 7 that all men are corrupt. The possibility for people to choose to sin will still be there. So the temptation of sin will still be there. It will not have been totally removed in the millennium. But prior to the beginning of the millennium, Satan will be bound up. Okay, so Satan and the beast, like I said, which is men's traditions, religions, governments, all that, will in the false prophet too, the false prophet, the religions, the anti-Messiah himself, the anti, will all have been cast into the lake of fire prior to the millennium. Okay, and Satan will be bound up. So he's not gonna, that influence won't be there with sin. The possibility to sin or be lawless will be. See what I'm saying? But without all that heavy duty influence and chaos and confusion, it'll be much easier for people to choose to serve Elohim and live a righteous life through obedience, because instead of being surrounded by all that chaos, confusion, and lies and falsehood and idolatry and all that delusion, they're going to be surrounded by fronts of righteousness, by Yahusha and His Bride. Okay, that's who their main influence will be. So instead of being surrounded by evil and darkness and delusion and the beast, they're going to be surrounded by light and righteousness and love and truth. See, it's going to be a lot easier for them to stay righteous, and walk in obedience to Yahuwah's commands. So when there's equality and justice and mercy and patience and humility all around them, instead of war and famine, disease, tyranny, and injustice and evil, then it'd be a lot easier for them to stay righteous and stay good, in other words, it'd be easier for them to turn away from sin, not fall to temptation. So, nevertheless, those who choose to live a sinful life, since sin will still be possible, and because they're given to their own pride and selfishness during this time, will probably die early. Matter of fact, Isaiah 65:20 kind of indicates that. So they may not live to be, 800-900 years, or even through the entire Millennium Reign, even to 1,000 years without dying. They'll probably die early, like we do now, or 100 or 200 years they'll die, because that's why we die, because of the sin. So Elohim's laws still apply, or will still apply, And nobody will be able to get away with sinning unnoticed. Okay, even though they do it, it's not going to be something they're going to get away with it. It's going to be brought up front real quick. Yahusha and His Bride, and possibly along with the martyrs that were killed in the Great Tribulation, will be ruling the earth. These are Elohim's most trusted servants. Yahusha, who was tried in all points, just like we were, never sinned. He remained without sin and has absolute authority in this millennium reign over all sin and unrighteousness, because he is 100% clean. And his bride is 100% united with Yahusha and with the will and in the will of Yahuah, living under his will of the Torah. Those who are the bride of Yahusha have also conquered sin in their lives prior to the millennium reign. They too have authority to judge and rule in righteousness, because they have let Elohim teach them this righteousness throughout their time on earth. Elohim has tested them, and they have been purified by fire in the same way as Yahusha. Yahusha and his bride will dry away the tears and bring joy and peace to people. But they have no tears of their own to dry away, because they are already filled with Elohim's Ruach, goodness and joy. The martyrs that come out of the Great Tribulation have also been tested and will also be along in the ruling during the Millennium Reign, for they have also given their lives to Elohim and were beheaded for their testimony. But in a different way than the bride. The glory and the responsibility of the bride of Yahusha will be much greater than that of the martyrs, because their sacrifice was much greater. But all of these will work together to ensure that the world grows in peace, harmony, righteousness, and obedience to the Torah during the Millennium Reign of Yahusha, of Yahuah. But after the Millennium Reign, even though the millennium will be a time lived in peace and righteousness, it is not Elohim's final goal for his creation. Hashatan, or the devil, who has been bound up for them 1,000 years, he was not completely annihilated or eradicated. And despite the wonderful and harmony of the earth, it is still not perfect in Elohim's eyes, because it bears the eternal stain of sin. So at the end of the Millennium Reign, Satan will be loosed from his chains for a short timeline or period. Though it is unclear exactly how long this time is, this is his final chance to deceive all the nations and get people to follow him. Incredibly, he will gather enough people from all over the earth to create an army, and they will surround Jerusalem again in the last desperate bid to take over Elohim's creation. But now it is finally, Yahuah will finally have had enough, and Satan's time will be up. Elohim will send fire down from the heaven to devour Satan's army. The devil will finally be cast into the lake of fire and brimstone where the beast and the anti-Messiah are, and they will be burnt, tormented there forever. Read Revelations 20, verses 7 through 10. So this marks the end of the Millennium Reign and is the last event before the final judgment takes place and before time ceases and before eternity starts. So, amazing, isn't it, that the world during that 1,000 years that people will have repopulated the planet to up to a population that when Satan's released, he gets an army together, and this army is mind blowing that anybody would want to listen to Satan after living under Yahuah, Yahusha's reign and the bride. It blows my mind, you know. But under perfect peace and harmony, and then they don't want it, they go to Satan and say, "Hey, let's attack them and kill them." So they attack the Jerusalem where Yahusha and the bride are, and they try to wipe them out. And basically, Yahusha says, "You know what? I'm done with this." And he brings fire down from the heavens, destroys his army. And those people there, during that Millennium Reign, or that take side with Satan, I don't think they're going to rise back up to the White Throne Judgement. I really don't. I think they're done. I think they're going to be annihilated right there and then. The ones that are still alive that didn't join up with Satan because they like living under Yahusha will probably face the White Throne Judgement, I would think. You know, but maybe not. Maybe they'll be given immortality and don't even have to go to the White Throne Judgement because they lived in under him and they obeyed him and cleaned themselves up and stayed clean, and so maybe they're given immortality before the White Throne Judgement even comes around. Because the White Throne Judgement seems to be basically centered on people that have already died, you know. So the ones that lived through that millennium and lived righteously under Yahusha may be given immortality, you know, after Satan and his army are destroyed, you know, which I don't think that they will be resurrected and brought back for the White Throne Judgement. Why would they? I mean, it's coming right now, right after the 1,000 Millennium Reign shows up, you know what I'm saying? Then comes the White Throne Judgement. It comes judgment of sin and evil. So why would he would destroy them with fire, throw Satan in the lake of fire, and then resurrect them right back up and make them stand in front of the White Throne Judgement? I don't think so. You know. Now the ones that are alive during the Millennium Reign and they make it to the last minute of the 1,000-year reign, I mean, they may have to go off into the White Throne Judgement, but they may just, or they may not. They may just be given immortality right there and then because they lived righteously in harmony with Yahusha, you know, on the earth, in the wonderful earth, that under his supreme government, you know, right rulings. So, anyways, that brings us up to now the White Throne Judgement. So we've gone through the tribulation years, the day of Yahuah, the Millennium Reign, and it's ended. So now the 7 days are gone. You know, 7,000 years are gone. 6,000 years allotted to man after the fall, or from creation, and then the 1,000-year Millennium Reign after the days of tribulation, the day of Yahuah, and now 1,000 years, okay, is ended. So now what? Now comes the White Throne Judgement. Okay? So, the White Throne Judgment is talked about mostly in Revelations 20. And so, the White Throne Judgment, we can start reading in Revelation 19. But I believe the White Throne Judgment involves all those who have died before Yahusha's birth. Okay, before the birth, the death, the burial, the resurrection, and the ascension back into the Shemayim of Yahusha. The ones that lived before that have all died, right? Besides maybe a handful. But all those. And then during the time of Yahuah, when Yahusha was alive, okay, that died. And then the ones after he ascended back into Shemayim, those people that knew him and didn't know him, okay, and then have died, will be in the White Throne Judgment. And that takes us all the way up into the day of Yahuah, when the reapers collected the weeds and the tares from among the wheat and bundled them up for the fire. I don't think those dead will be in the White Throne Judgment. I think they've already been judged and condemned and burnt up. Obviously, the bride has been given immortality and won't be judged at the White Throne Judgment. The bride will be excluded. And then into the Millennium Reign. The ones that the world was repopulated, and I think that the ones that remained alive through the entire 1,000 years under the government of Yahusha will be given immortality at the end of that 1,000 years. And the ones that died, if they did die, were like 800 years old or whatever, but they were still living under, being righteous under the reign of Yahusha during that Millennium Reign, will probably be resurrected and judged. But I think the ones that actually lived that whole entire 1,000-year span may be just given immortality right there and then, or they may have to go in front of the White Throne. I don't know. It really doesn't say. In my opinion, they won't be. They'll be given immortality. But the ones that died, that say were like 600 years or 700, or 800 years or 900 years old, didn't quite make it through the entire 1,000 years. They died before the end of it, will probably be resurrected and go in front of the White Throne Judgment. And of course, they will probably, more than likely, will be the sheep that are going to be on his right side and be given immortality because they lived righteously under Yahusha's government. The ones that sinned and died during the Millennium Reign, because sin was still there, The ones that died young because of sin will probably be raised up and judged, possibly, possibly. Then again, they may not be, because they lived under the righteousness of Yahusha's government and chose to sin anyway. So they may just be cast straight into the lake of fire when they died. Who knows? But if they weren't, then they'd be raised up and go into the front of the White Throne Judgment. Obviously, they won't be seeing immortality, because they died young, and they were right there being ruled, governed under Yahusha, man, and they chose not to be righteous under the reign of Yahusha and the Bride. That's crazy. And then the ones that after the thousand-year Millennium Reign closed and it was over, and Satan was released and thrown into the lake of fire, but the army that he gathered together of the group that actually lived through the Millennium Reign, that chose to side with Satan and march against Yahusha and his encampment, his bride in Jerusalem, and he brought fire down and struck them with fire and burned them up. I don't think they're going to be raised back up into judge a White Throne Judgement. I think they're done. Okay, so if they are, they're going to be cast into the lake of fire and annihilated, but I have a feeling they already were, body and soul, So anyway, it's the White Throne Judgement. Let's go to chapter 19, verse 10. Worship Yahuah, for the witness of Yahusha is the ruach of prophecy. And I saw the heaven open up, and there was a white horse, and he who sat on him was called trustworthy and true, and in uprightness he judges and fights. And his eyes were as flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, having the name that has been written, which no one has perceived except him. And having been dressed in a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of Yahuah, and the armies in the heaven, dressed in fine linen, white and clean, followed him on white horses. And out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall shepherd them with the rod of iron, and he treads the white winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Al Shaddai. And on his robe and on his thigh he has a name written, Sovereign of Sovereigns and Master of Masters. And I saw one messenger standing in the sun, and he cried out with a loud voice, saying to all the birds that fly in mid-heaven, Come and gather together for the supper of the great Yahuah, to eat the flesh of sovereigns, and the flesh of commanders, and the flesh of strong ones, and the flesh of horses, and those who sit on them, and the flesh of all people, free and slave, both small and great. And I saw the behemoth, or the beast, and the sovereigns of the earth, and their armies gathered together to fight him who sat on the horse and his army. And the behemoth was seized, and with him the false prophet who worked signs in his presence, by which he led astray those who received the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image. The two were thrown alive into the lake of fire, burning with sulfur. So these are these two are the very first to enter the lake of fire. Okay, the false prophet and the beast. That's religion and men's governments. And the rest were killed with the sword that came from the mouth of him who sat on the horse, and all the birds were filled with their flesh. And so Yahusha's going to be the one judging. Yahusha's going to be the judge. There's no doubt about it. The verses that prove that Yahusha is going to be the judge at the White Throne Judgement. You can look up Hebrews 9:27, Revelations 19:11, Isaiah 33:22, 2 Corinthians 5:10, James 5:9, Matthew 19:28, John 5:22 through 27, Acts 10:12 or 10:1 through 2, Acts 17:31, Revelations 20:11, Romans 14:10, 2 Timothy 4:8, Matthew 12:36, Romans 2:16, Ezekiel 7 verses 7 and 8. That's just some of them. There's a ton more. But let's get back to the White Throne Judgment. And I saw a messenger coming down from the heaven, having the key to the pit of the deep, and a great chain in his hand. And he seized the dragon, the serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. And he threw him into the pit of the deep, and shut him up, and set a seal on him, so that he should lead the nations no more astray, until the 1,000 years were ended. And after that he has to be released a little while. And I saw thrones, and they sat on them, and judgment was given to them. And the lives of those who had been beheaded because of the witness they bore to Yahuah, and because of the word of Yahuah, and who did not worship the beast nor his image, and did not receive his mark upon their foreheads or upon their hands. And they lived and reigned with Mashiach for 1,000 years. And the rest of the dead did not come to life until the 1,000 years were ended. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and set apart is the one having part in the first resurrection. The second death possesses no authority over these, but they shall be priests of Yahuah and of Mashiach, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. And when the 1,000 years have ended, Satan shall be released from his prison, and he shall go out to lead the nations astray which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together for battle, whose number is of the sand of the sea. Well, they did a whole lot of populating over them 1,000 years, didn't they? And they came up over the breadth of the Eretz and surrounded the camp of the set apart ones, or the Kadeshim, and the beloved city where Yahusha and his bride were living, Jerusalem. And fire came down from Yahuah out of the heaven and consumed them, destroyed the armies with fire. And the devil who led them astray was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet are. And they shall be tortured day and night forever and ever. And I saw a great white throne. It says, so here we go. It leads us up to the great white throne. And I saw a great white throne, and him who was sitting on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away, and no place was found for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, standing before the throne, and scrolls were opened. And another scroll was opened, which is of life. And the dead were judged from what was written in those scrolls, according to their works. And the sea gave up the dead who were in it, and death and the grave gave up the dead who were in them, and they were judged, each one according to their works. And the death and the grave were thrown into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And if anyone was not found written in the scroll of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. So I don't believe, the people that lived prior to Messiah, and even after the Messiah's ascension up into the day of Yahuah, that didn't know about Yahuah or the Torah, they're not going to be judged because of their ignorance. Okay, they're not going to be judged by their lineage or their race or nationality or their skin color, or if they're male or female or any of that, or through ignorance. They're going to be judged by their works and their words. That's what they're going to be judged by. And they're going to be, so everybody that faces the White Throne Judgment are going to be separated. He's going to separate them. What he says is the sheep will be on his right hand and the goats on his left. The sheep are going to come in to eternity and live forever, be given immortality, and the goats will not. They're going to be destroyed, annihilated in the lake of fire. Okay, body and being, soul gone. Okay, like they were never born. So, but the ones that were in ignorance of the true name or the existence of Yahuah or the Torah, never got to read the Torah or see the Torah or the Tanakh or the Nazarene writings, uh, they're not going to be judged for doing stuff that they didn't know they were not allowed to do, but they will be judged by the Torah because they're a Torah to themselves. Because Yahuah wrote the Torah in every single person's conscience, within your inner conscious, your subconscious mind, and in your heart. You know what's right and what's wrong, evil and good, naturally, because he placed it inside of you so that you don't have an excuse. Also, he wrote his story in nature itself. Nature itself is the heavens and the earth are his two witnesses that he exists. Okay, and so you're without excuse. If you say you don't believe in him and you're an atheist, you have no excuse, man. You can't say, well, I never saw you, or I never read your scriptures, so how am I supposed to know? Yeah, I never saw you, so I assumed you weren't real. You're without excuse because the earth, the heaven, and the earth itself testifies to you of his existence, okay, and his laws, right rulings, or his commands, what's right and what's wrong, his universal laws of right and wrong, or his universal law of love and truth is written in your conscience. He wrote it in there. So you have no excuse for be saying I didn't know the law either. Okay, what's right? I didn't know that was right or wrong. So you're not going to be judged out of ignorance, okay, because you didn't know the true name or whatever like that, but you will be judged by your works and your words according to your conscience and according to the heaven and the nature, the creation. We can read about that. It's in Romans 2, verse 5. But according to your hardness and your unrepentant heart, you are treasuring up for yourself wrath in the day of wrath and revelation of the righteous judgment of Yahuah, who shall render to each one according to his works. Everlasting life to those who by determination and good work seek for esteem and respect and incorruptibility, but wrath and displeasure to those who are self-seeking and do not obey the truth, but obey unrighteousness. Affliction and distress on every person working what is evil, of the Jews initially, and also the Greek, or the nations. But esteem, respect, and peace to everyone working what is good, to the Jews initially, and also the Greek, or nations. For there is no partiality with Yahuah. For as many as sinned without Torah shall also perish without Torah, and as many as sinned in the Torah shall be judged by the Torah. For not the hearers of the Torah are righteous in the sight of Yahuah, but the doers of the Torah shall be declared right. For when nations who do not have the Torah by instinct do what is in the Torah, although not having the Torah, they are a Torah to themselves, who show the work of the Torah written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and between themselves their thoughts accusing or even excusing. In the day when Yahuah shall judge the secrets of men through Yahusha Mashiach, according to my Besorah. See, there you go. So you have no excuse because it's written in your mind, in your heart, in your conscience. All right? So if you have the Torah and all that you know from the Torah, you're going to be judged of whether or not you obeyed it or not. The stuff that you don't know about in the Torah, you won't be judged on that. If you don't have it and you never knew about it, you're going to be judged on what he wrote in your conscience, his Torah in your conscious mind, placed it in there. Whether you did it, obeyed it, or whether you did not, is how you're going to be judged, by your works, on how you obeyed His written Torah in your mind, in your conscience mind, in your heart. In other words, everybody on the planet knows it's wrong to murder somebody. So if you murder somebody and you know it was wrong, even though you never read the Torah, you're going to be judged by that murder you just did, because you knew it was wrong, because you wrote it in your conscience mind, etc., etc., etc. So that's the White Throne Judgment. And then afterwards, after all sin and everyone who ever lived has been judged, and either have been given immortality to join the flock, the one flock under the one shepherd, with the bride, with Yahusha and the bride being ruling, okay, or throw it away into annihilation, or just totally annihilated, like you were never born, body and soul. Okay, and then all that remains then are those that are the chosen of Yahuah. He's going to give eternity to, and they're going to be with Him forever and ever and ever. Okay, so now we went through tribulation, the day of Yahuah, the Millennium Reign, the White Throne Judgment. That brings us up to the new heaven and the new earth. So at this point, after all's been judged, all the wrong will never see the bride. Okay, in other words, they'll never see eternity with the bride, and all the sheep that have been delivered from the lake of fire. They'll never see what their inheritance is. They'll never know the greatness and the beauty and the awesomeness of what the bride and the sheep of Yahuah, the chosen or the elect of Yahuah, are inheriting. They're not going to be able to. They'll never see it. Okay, so the ones that are delivered will, and what we're going to see is the new heaven and the new earth. Okay, and on the new heaven and the new earth, we don't know what it's going to be like, but we know there's going to be one. All the old things have all passed away. And then, well, let's read about that. It says, and I saw, this is chapter 21, Revelations. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the former heaven and the former earth had passed away. So if it passed away, it can only be new, So he's going to create something new here. And the sea is no more. There's no more sea. So it must be going to be all land. And Yahuchanan, saw the set apart city. So here we go. So you're going to have a new heaven and new earth, first thing. All right. I believe this is going to be done in a 7-day period, like the first time around. I think he's going to create the new heaven and the new earth. It's going to take him 6 days to do it, like he did before. Okay. And then he's going to rest on the 7th day, just like he did before. All right. And that's going to continue the 7-day week rotation, just like it was in the beginning. So that's why the Sabbath, that rest day, will continue on. That's why I think that the 7 days of creation, the 7 days that we lived through, those 7,000 years, and then he'll create again in 7 days again, with the 7th day rest day as well. So he had the first Sabbath on his first creation, the 1,000-year Sabbath, or the 7th day Sabbath for the rest of the earth during the Millennium Reign. And I think you're going to have a 7th day Sabbath when he creates the new heaven and the new earth, and a 1-week pattern again. See what I'm saying? And that's why the Sabbath will go all the way through forever and ever into eternity. It's never going to stop, because that 7-day pattern never stopped. In the beginning, it was 7 days. The millennium, through the 6,000 years and the 1,000-year millennium, those 7 days. And then his new earth and new heaven, 7 days The seventh day will be the Sabbath, and we'll be observing that Sabbath day through eternity. Okay, so there's a new earth and a new heaven. Then it says, and John and I, Yahuah, saw the set apart city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of the heaven from Yahuah, prepared for the bride, adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the heavens saying, see, the Sukkah, or the tent of Yahuah, is with men, and he shall dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and Yahuah himself shall be with them and be their Yahuah. So there you go. So now you're into the new Jerusalem, coming down from the Shemaim upon the earth. You know, down on where Israel is, where Jerusalem is now, but it's going to be new. Okay, and then after that, we go into eternity. Okay, so Revelations 22 says, and see, I am coming speedily, and my reward is with me, to give to each according to his work. I am the leaf and the taw, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Blessed are those doing his commands, so that the authority shall be theirs to the tree of life, and to enter through the gates into the city. That's that new city that just come down. But outside are the dogs, and those who enchant with drugs, and those who whore, and the murderers, and the idolaters, and those who love and do falsehood. That means they're not going to be around, man, to go into the city. They've been annihilated. Okay. And I, Yahusha, have sent my messenger to witness to you these in the assemblies. I am the root and the offspring of David, the bright and morning star. And the Ruach and the bride say, come. And he who hears, let him say, come. And he who thirsts, come. And he who desires it, take the water of life without paying. All right, so that's pretty much it. I think we've covered most of what's coming up in the near future here. And, the tribulation, the day of Yahuah, the Millennium Reign, the White Throne Judgement, the new heaven and earth, the new Jerusalem, and eternity. Okay? So, how close are we to the end times? Who knows? We lost count. All the calendars that are available to us ain't going to put us back on count, because I looked at them myself, and I can't make heads or tails out of them, really. Like I say, you have to almost be a mathematician to even start looking at them, especially the Hebrew calendar. They actually add a full month. Every so many years, they add a whole full month in there just to keep the appointed times in proximity where the Torah says they should be, and it's just a big mess. So we really don't know. The year of that we're in probably really doesn't matter anyway. So we're close. Within we're definitely within a couple hundred years. 225 years or 250 years or less. Okay, we're right in that, toward the end of that 6,000 years, man. And that door's going to get shut one of these years on Yom Kippur. Thank you for watching, folks. And remember, stay in love with Yahusha HaMashiach. Bonus feature time. We do have a little bit of knowledge given to us about what the new earth and the new heaven and the new Jerusalem is going to look like. Just a little bit, but it's worth reading. It's very intriguing. to say the least. So if you can open up your mind a little bit and just see if we can kind of take this in. This is just maybe the shadow of what it's really going to be, but nevertheless, it's given to us. So let's read it, see if we can get a vision, just a little bit of a glimpse, possibly, perhaps, of what the new heaven, the new earth, and the new city is going to look like. So in Revelations 21, verse 9, says, "Come, and I shall show you the bride, the Lamb's Asha." Okay. I'm going to guess that that's metaphoric. "And he carried me away in the spirit, or the Ruach, to a great and high mountain, and showed me the great city, the Kadesh Jerusalem, set apart Jerusalem, descending out of the heaven from Yahuah." So here we go. This is on the new earth now. This Jerusalem's coming down upon the new earth. So we know that on the new earth, there's going to be a great and high mountain. It's going to look down on Jerusalem. Okay. Jerusalem itself, the city that's coming down, is approximately just shy of 1,400 miles cube. 1,400 mile cube. Okay, that's pretty big. That's pretty good size, really. Anyway, there's going to be a great and high mountain on the new earth that overlooks New Jerusalem. We know that, tells us that. Having esteem, descending out of the heaven from Yahuah, having the esteem of Yahuah, and her light was like the most precious stone, like a jasper stone, clear as crystal, and having a great and high wall, having 12 gates, and at the gates 12 messengers, and names written on them, which are the 12 tribes of the children of Yisrael. So here we go. We got a beautiful city coming down, clear as crystal, jasper stone, great walls, 12 gates, 12 messengers guarding the gates. And written on the gates are the 12 tribes of the children of Yisrael. All 12 tribes now. I know there's some stuff in there where certain tribes aren't mentioned and stuff like that. But this right here says, and this is the last thing that happens, by the way, before eternity comes, is that each gate will have a name of each of the 12 tribes. That tells me there's going to be somebody from all 12 tribes in eternity. 3 gates are on the east, 3 gates on the north, 3 gates on the south, and 3 gates on the west. And the wall of the city had 12 foundations. The wall of the city had 12 foundations. Man, that's thick foundation. And on them were the names of the 12 emissaries of the Lamb. So that would be the 12 apostles. Their names are on the foundations. And he who spoke with me had a gold measuring rod to measure the city and its gates and its wall. And the city lies 4-cornered. It's a square or a cube. And its length is as great as its breadth. And he measured the city with the rod, 2,200 kilometers. Length and the breadth and the height of it are equal. So it's a cube, a square cube, about 1,400 miles, breadth, length, and height. And he measured its wall. The wall around it was 65 meters, according to the measure of a man, that is, of a messenger. The messenger was doing the measuring. And the structure of its wall was jasper, and the city was clean gold, like clear glass. No blemish. It's clean, not a spot on it. And the foundations of the wall of the city were adorned with all kinds of precious stones. Wow, so the foundations had all kinds of precious stones in them, inlaid in them. The first foundation, jasper. The second, sapphire. The third, agate. The fourth, emerald. The fifth, sardonyx. The sixth, ruby. The seventh, crystallite. The eighth, beryl. The ninth, topaz. The 10th, chrysoprase. The 11th, jacinth. And the 12th, amethyst. And the 12 gates were 12 pearls. There's where the Christians are getting the pearly gates from. It's on the new city, Jerusalem. And there's 12 of them. There ain't just one letting you in. There's 12. The 12 gates were 12 pearls. Each one of the gates was a single pearl. Wow, solid single pearl. Amazing. And the street of the city was clean gold, like transparent glass. Man. And I saw no temple in it, for Yahuah Al Shaddai is its temple in the Lamb. So we're going to be walking in and out of Yahuah. That's metaphoric, I'm sure. Maybe not, because that's what we're kind of doing now anyway, isn't it? He's in us and we're in him. And the city had no need for the sun. The sun had went dark, remember? And the moon, which also went dark, didn't give its light, turned to red blood moon, to shine in it, for the steam of Yahuah lightened it. And the Lamb is its lamp, the menorah. So that's given us a little bit of a vision, of the new earth and the new Jerusalem, right? So then we go down to 22. It gives us just a little bit more. And he showed me a river of water of life, clear as crystal, coming from the throne of Yahuah and of the Lamb. So, wow, you got water coming from the throne, clear as a bell. You can see right through it to the bottom, no problem. Clear as crystal. See right through the water. In the middle of its street and on either side of the river, in the middle of its street, the street's gold, pure gold. And on either side of the river, which is clear glass, so there must be a river running down through the gold street coming from the throne, was the tree of life. On either side of the river was the tree of life, which bore 12 fruits, each tree yielding its fruit each moon. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. And no longer shall there be any curse, and the throne of Yahuah and of the Lamb shall be in it, and his servants shall serve him. And they shall see his face, and his name shall be in their foreheads. And night shall be no more, and they shall have no need of a lamp or of the light of the sun, because Yahuah shall give them light, and they shall reign forever and ever. Amen. So that gives us a little bit of a peek, if you will, of eternity. Sounds real interesting to me. But I'm sure that's just a drop of water in the Pacific Ocean compared to what it's going to be like. I can't wait. Moranata! 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 So, thank you for watching. And remember to stay in love with Yahusha. Stay true and trustworthy to your husband, and obey your marriage vows, the covenant of love, so that we can eat together at the consummation of the marriage. Eat at the marriage supper of the Lamb together. I want to see you there. So we'll close out this lesson with the last words written in Revelations, which are, yes, yes, come, come, Master Yahusha. The favor of our Master Yahusha, Mashiach, be with the set apart ones. Amen. So long, Nazarene, beloved of Yahuah. Bonus feature 2 time. So what does all this that we just talked about have to do with the 7 festivals or the 7 appointed times of Yahuah? Well, when we think with our spiritual mind and we leave our fleshly mind behind, then we can begin to start putting it together in a more deeper level of understanding. After the tribulation years and man's time runs out, 6,000 years, comes the day of Yahuah. So the fall festivals are Yom Teruah, the first one, there's 3, indicates to us the resurrection of those who have fallen asleep with Yahusha's indwelling spirit, the first resurrection of the dead, the first fruits to Yahuah, sort of speak. Of course, Yahusha HaMashiach is the first fruits of the dead, the very firstborn. He's the firstborn. But the first resurrection group is the first fruits of the resurrection, the sons of Yahuah. Then we have the 10 days of awe, where the dead, the resurrected dead, or those who have fallen asleep, wake up for 10 days and witness to those that are still upon the earth. And then 10 days later is Yom Kippur, which is the final day of the 6,000 years allotted to mankind. At the end of that day of Yom Kippur, when 3 medium-sized stars are seen in the sky, the day ends, the fast is over, and Yom Kippur represents the closing of the 6,000 years of man given to men. Up to that final second that the door closes and the fullness of the Gentiles come in, man can be delivered by calling on the name of Yahuah. For Scripture says, it is written that all who call on the name of Yahuah shall be delivered. And then the day of Yahuah comes as a consuming fire, burns up the earth, the heavens, the elements melt. Right after the closing of the 6,000 years and the blowing of the shofar, indicating the end of the age, those who remain alive at that time will be given immortality. They will be changed in the blink of an eyelid, the wink of an eye, and given immortality. So the first resurrection group and those that remain alive at the closing of Yom Kippur will be given immortality. And they will be the bride of Yahusha. After the day of Yahuah and everything burns up, few men will be left. Then comes the return of the King. Yahusha comes back to the earth for his bride, to redeem his bride. For those who are redeemed by the sealing of his blood and the sealing of the name of Yahuah upon their foreheads. And he comes back, as he's coming back with his messengers, all his messengers on white horse, and them on white horses. He comes back with the crowns on his head and written across his chest and on his thighs is the sovereign of sovereigns and the master of masters. He calls his bride up to him. The messengers collect his bride from all four corners of the winds and of the earth, of the heavens, and bring them to him. And they are caught up with him in the clouds as he is returning to the Mount of Olives. When he touches down to the Mount of Olives, the heavens and the earth shake with a tremendous earthquake, and they're shaken. And the Mount of Olives splits in two. And Yahuah, Yahusha, and his bride reside in Jerusalem. The earth renews and repopulates through the Millennium Reign of Yahusha and his bride. For 1,000 years, or one day to Yahuah. For that seventh day, the earth rests and is under the rule and the government of Yahusha HaMashiach and his bride. Satan has been bound. The beast and the false prophet has been cast into the lake of fire. There is no evil influence on man. The 1,000 years will be without heavy influence of sin and evil. Those who do not listen to Yahuah or Yahusha and the bride, and they choose to sin, because they will still have their fleshly bodies as they repopulate the world, will die early. The ones that adhere to them and listen to them shall live for a long time, possibly the entire 1,000 years. At the end of the 1,000-year millennium comes the Feast of Tabernacles, the third feast. There'll be a new heaven and a new earth. So the first day of Tabernacles is the first day of creation again. And he begins to recreate the heavens and the earth. And he creates them through the 6 days, the 6-day pattern of creation. And then on the 7th day of Tabernacles, he rests. The New Jerusalem comes down from the heavens from Yahuah onto the earth, where Jerusalem is. It's a huge city, 1,400 miles by 1,400 miles by 1,400 miles. It's a square cube. And he rests for a day. The 7th day of Tabernacles is a Sabbath. He rests. On the 8th day starts eternity. So the 8th day of Tabernacles, the last great day, maybe the day Jerusalem comes down, the New Jerusalem, could be, onto the earth. And then eternity. And so therefore there will be a third 7-day pattern of creation and we will rest on the seventh day. And the eighth day may be the sign of the new beginnings or of eternity, where the new Jerusalem comes down and the bride and the husband, Yahusha HaMashiach, and his body resides for eternity in the new city, Jerusalem, forever and ever and ever. Amen. So there you have it, folks. I hope this helps you understand spirituality, the seven appointed times, and what's soon to come in our near future. Straight true to your husband. Obey his commands. Obey your marriage vows. Forsake all others. And be true and trustworthy to your husband, Yahusha. So long, beloved of Yahuah.
Yahusha, living water, Baruch haba b'Shem Yahuah. I sing out with praise to you. Your name is beautiful to me, my King. I sing out with praise to you. My heart desires to honor you, my Yah. I sing out with praise to you, Yahusha. Living Torah, Baruch haba b'Shem Yahuah. Yahusha, living Torah, Baruch haba b'Shem Yahuah. I sing out with praise to you. Your name is beautiful to me, my King. I sing out with praise to you. My heart desires to honor you, my Yah. I sing out with praise to you, Yahusha. Living Torah, Baruch haba b'Shem Yahuah. Baruch haba b'Shem Yahuah. Baruch haba b'Shem Yahuah. Baruch haba b'Shem Yahuah. living water, Baruch haba b'Shem Yahuah, Yahusha, living water, Baruch haba b'Shem Yahuah. I sing out with praise to you. Your name is beautiful to me, my King. I sing out with praise to you. My heart desires to honor you, my Yah. I sing out with praise to you, Yahusha, living Torah, Baruch haba b'Shem Yahuah, Yahusha, living Torah, Baruch haba b'Shem Yahuah. I sing out with praise.